but if you want to put it on, that's totally fine. The speaker presentations will be shared with you at the end of this event. But also please feel free to ask questions. You can raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone, or you can leave your questions in the chat and we can circle back at the end when we're going to have a space for questions. Lastly, we care about your feedback. If you have any feedback to help us improve our events, we will be happy to hear about it. Let us know. You can either send us an email at csc3 at ecu.edu or via this event through a private message if needed. Next slide. All right, so now I'm going to present our speaker, Dr. Carol Massarra. She's an associate professor for the Department of Construction Management here at ECU, and she's also a graduate program director in the Department of Construction Management. She serves as the director of coastal resilience at CSE3, and she employs interdisciplinary research approach to improve buildings, the environment, and the quality of life. Her research has spanned multidisciplinary projects from the U.S. Department of Defense, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. Her research focuses on the areas of community resilience, predictive statistical models, and automated data collection and damage assessments. As a graduate program director, she interacts with many students from different backgrounds and always tries to promote research among her students. Currently, she's working on a project to develop building predictive maintenance model using LoRa sensors. So without further ado, I'm giving the floor for you, Dr. Carol Massarra, to continue your presentation.
Thank you, Marley. Thank you
You're
so
very
much.
welcome.
And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for participating in this webinar. As Marley said, today we will talk about hurricane resilience and pollution prevention strategies. And this is the outline of the webinar today. We will start with a background about hurricane-related risk and pollution sources, to understand about hurricane risk and pollution sources. Next, we will talk why pollution prevention is important for manufacturing facilities, why they need to consider this. Then I will present 3 case studies from previous events, compare these case studies in terms of hurricane risk and pollution. Then I will talk about hurricane mitigation strategies, because we need to understand mitigation strategies before we understand and implement the pollution prevention strategies. And by the end, I will present how manufacturing facility can prevent pollution before a hurricane event occurs. I would like to say that this topic is a current topic for one of my undergraduate students, and it's still ongoing. So I would like to hear about your feedback to improve this. So, hurricane related risk and pollution sources. Before we go deep into the risk and pollution sources, we need to just to refresh our mind about hurricane hazard. So, hurricane hazard are either extreme wind, storm surge, inland flooding, or heavy rainfall. So the understanding of a hurricane is a single event. Actually, it's not. It may look it's a single event, but like either a wind event or a storm surge event, but actually it's a multiple hazard. So it's a combined hazard, but one of these hazard would be the dominated hazards in that specific event. So when I will talk about the case studies, you will see that each case study has multiple hazards in it, but one hazard was the dominated hazard for that specific event. So hurricane related risk are the result of these hazards, and these risks varies among public health, economy, social and community, and in the next slide about structural damage, about air pollution. So one of the common or most common effect for public health is mold growth. This is when water gets inside the house and stays there for multiple hours, sometimes multiple days. This is when we get the mold in the house. Uh, Other effect is the contaminated drinking water and air pollution. For economic effects, the most one that we see is the property damage. This is one of the most common economic effect, and this also will result in insurance claim and rate increases. And also one of the most common effect is the construction costs. This is when it will really increase. Related to social and community effects, displacement of residents, this is a very common effect. It may last for weeks, months, and sometimes years. So I remember in 2016, a flood hit Baton Rouge in Louisiana, and some of the residents were displaced from their houses for more than a year until their houses got repaired. So this is a very let's say concern risk for most of people. Structure effects are a result of wind damage or flood. So one of the risks that we see from the wind is the roof uplift and failure, wall collapse, and window and door breakage. For the flood, foundation scour, structure shifting from their place um, are the most risk that a result of the flood. Environmental effect, water contamination, which is a result of sewage overflow or chemical spills or fuel leaks. Uh, Ecosystem damage, this is when we have a wetland erosion. And finally, infrastructure effects. This is when we lost power, when the road washouts, or where the bridge damaged. So we can see that hurricane has a lot of related risk. On the other hand, hurricane will have a lot of related pollution, and there are sources for this pollution. So, first source of pollution is the water, the wastewater and sewage overflow. It happens when a power outage shut down treatment plants or when sewer system exceed its capacity. This will result, or the impact of this will be either a disease or a bacteria in the water or in the rivers and the soil contamination. Second source is industrial and chemical releases. It happens when a storm surge floods the refineries and chemical plants, or when a storage tanks float off foundation, or pipeline breaks either due to erosion or to debris hitting the pipeline. So the impact of this kind of pollution could be a contaminated drinking water, or a fish kills in marsh ecosystem, or a long-term soil contamination. The third source of pollution is solid waste and debris contamination. It happens when a landfill flood, or when house hazard waste mix with the flood water, or when we have a massive debris piles in front of the houses or in the area hit by a hurricane. The impact of this will be a soil and groundwater contamination and airborne particulates during debris burning. Last source is the air pollution, and this happened when, for example, a portable generators, when we use a portable generators, or when we burn a debris, or when mold grows in a flooded building. The result will be some carbon monoxide poisoning and long-term indoor and outdoor air quality issues. So if we look at these pollution, we can see that these pollution sources affect either water and soil, air, indoor and outdoor air. And the time frame for this pollution spans from immediate to a very long term effect. So it's not like we know how the time frame of the effect. Okay, it depends on the type of pollution. So it can be either immediate effect. This is when the hurricane hit, or it can be a long term effect which lasts after the events ends. So, why pollution prevention is important for manufacturing facilities? There are a lot of reasons um, for manufacturing facilities to care about pollution prevention. First is to prevent hazardous releases into the environment. So we know when wind and storm surge hit, this can tip over some chemical storage tanks or break the process lines or can flood wastewater management. So this will result in a lot of soil, could be water contamination and even air contamination. So pre-planning will help keep these materials content. It will reduce the risk to soil, to groundwater, to surf water, and to community. So the keyword is pre-planning. So we need to pre-plan for the event. Second is to protect public health and nearby communities. So if these uncontrolled materials um, like we are unable to control it, this will expose the community to chemical vapors, contaminated floodwaters, and toxic runoff. So, pollution prevention safeguards nearby communities and neighborhoods, especially in industrial and coastal region, is very needed. Third is to reduce liability, clean up costs, and regularity penalties. So, when environmental releases during a storm, often it will lead to expensive cleanup, a very expensive cleanup. And second, it's a violation of either EPA, OSHA, or state environmental regulation. Therefore, preventing pollution before the event happen is far cheaper than responding to contamination after the event happened. So this goes also to pre-planning. Finally, keeps business continuity plans intact. So if we did not check for pollution, this pollution can shut down operation, can destroy equipment, and can lead to a costly remediation. Therefore, prevention will help facility resume operation faster after the storm passes. So all of these link to pre-planning or prevention. Any question up to here? Okay, So before we start talking about mitigation strategies and pollution strategies, I would like to present three case studies. It's based on events of major hurricane events that hit three different area in the United States. So first, Hurricane Katrina, it hit New Orleans and Mississippi area in 2005. I think until now it considers that the one of the most devastating and costly event in the history of the United States. It was a Category 5 storm. Um, the deaths exceeded 1,800, and the estimated damage exceeded to $125 billion. So this event was a storm surge dominated event. Please keep in mind this. So it's a storm surge dominated event, and approximately 80% of New Orleans flooded because of this uh, huge event and because of the levee failure. So more than 50 levees failure happened during Hurricane Katrina. So some of the pollution related to Hurricane Katrina were oil and fuel spills, chemical releases, sewage overflows, contaminated water, toxic debris, mold. So people experienced a lot of these, especially because of the flood. So most of the houses there were flooded. And also, New Orleans is industrial area and it has a lot of a chemical and a lot of factories there, so that the oil and the fuel from these plants were also a huge sources of pollution. Second event is Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey hit Texas in 2017. And unlike Katrina, Hurricane Harvey was a rainfall driven event. Yes, it had multiple hazards, as I said at the beginning, but the dominated hazard here was a rain. The deaths exceeded 100. Estimated damage also exceeded 125 billion. It was a category 4. Some area experienced 60 inches of rain. So it was a very heavy rainstorm, rain hurricane, and it hit Texas. And also we know Texas has a lot of factories, a lot of chemical and oil plants. So the pollution related to Hurricane Harvey were chemical spills, sewage also overflow, contaminated water, heavy metals, a lot of air pollution. Third case study was Hurricane Helene, which hit western North Carolina in 2024. It started as a coastal event, but then when it landed at the shore, then it hits the inland, which was the first time North Carolina or western North Carolina experience a hurricane. So the major impact for this event was a flash flooding, landslide and slope failures, and infrastructure damage, a lot of infrastructure damage. So the pollution related to Hurricane Helene was heavy sediment runoff, contaminated waterways, sewage overflow. So we can see that sewage overflow is like common between most of the event. System damage from flooding, fuel and chemical spills, runoff carrying debris, a lot of debris resulting from the landslide. So if we will look at the big picture to compare these three events. So each event has its dominated hazard. Yes, it's a combined hazard, but one of them was a dominating hazard. Um, each event has its geographical area. So Katrina was a coastal, Harvey was urban coastal, and Helene was a mountain event. Infrastructure, the three experience is if infrastructure failure, industrial pollution risk, the three had a lot of risk resulting from like plans and facilities. So this tells us that these three events represent three different hurricane risks. Okay, um, structural protection failure, Katrina; extreme rainfall, Harvey; and topography and landslide for Helene. So hurricane risk is not uniform. This is obvious, and it depends on the location, the land use, the infrastructure, the industry density, and the soil and terrain condition. So, lesson learned from these three events in terms of pollution. So, when we have a contaminated or a toxic flood waters, this will result in a contaminated with sewage and chemical and oil. So, therefore, stormwater management and industrial site safeguard must assume that extreme flooding will carry this hazard far beyond where it happened. So, we should understand that the pollution will not stay in its place, it will go somewhere else. Second, the industrial hazard. So pollution risk near vulnerable communities. So zoning is very important. Industrial siting and environmental justice policy must be strengthened to protect the population in that area. So community is very important. So we should know how to protect community. Third, delay of chemical reporting. So we should have a rapid chemical release reporting. It's essential for public safety and for emergency responses. So we should have something ready that we can prepare and release. So in this case, we guarantee the public safety. Biological and chemical risk. So responsive plans must treat post-hurricane floodwater as hazardous material. So we should consider floodwaters as a hazard material. It's not hazard because it will be mixed with other chemical. So hazard waste storage. So we should relocate and redesign the storage to prevent toxic uh, from spread. So we should have a plan on how we store this chemical. Long-term environmental damage. So as I said, pollution from hurricane is not immediate. Yes, some of it may be immediate, but majority of it's a long-term time frame. So we should monitor this for could be a years. Okay, So this should be taken into consideration. Lastly, the climate resilient infrastructure, so we should adopt mitigation for pollution, and also before we adopt pollution mitigation, we should have some structural mitigation because they are related. So this brings us to the hurricane mitigation strategies. So why we need first to adopt hurricane mitigation strategies, then later on adopt a hurricane pollution prevention strategies. So hurricane mitigation strategies can be divided into two categories, a hurricane wind mitigation, and later on I will talk about a hurricane flood mitigation. So hurricane wind mitigation, usually the key strategies we used are we design for a continuous load path from roof to foundation. This is what the structural engineering do. We use a hurricane eclipse to connect the roof to the wall. We reinforce the roof decking. We use a hurricane shutters. This is very important to protect the windows and doors, so to protect any opening. Uh, and we strengthen the garage door because the garage door is considered one of the openings, so we have to strengthen the garage door to prevent internal pressure. So because this is what will cause most of the damage. Um, how we do the roof improvement, the key strategy is to install secondary water barrier. Uh, the use of hip roofs is better than gable roof because it will resist wind more, and maintain the roof covering and flashing. Material and construction. So we used a flood damage resistant material below the base flood elevation, um, and we avoid the interior finishes like drywall insulation below flood level. Most important, which people do not pay attention to this, is to protect utility, especially to elevate the HVAC system and any generator you have outside the house. This is very important. Um, the hurricane flood mitigation now strategies. Um, the most common strategy is to elevate the structure above the base flood elevation. These are a FEMA recommendation. Use open foundation in coastal zones. We Very important thing is to do is to map the flood risk using the FEMA flood map insurance rate. Avoid building in a high risk coastal and flood zones. So we need to know which flood zones we are located in when we build the houses. Develop a hazard mitigation plans. This is very important. And recently FEMA is adopting the use of natural based solution. Um, this is something new adopted by FEMA, and they are encouraging a lot on using these natural based solution. So now, since we learned about hurricane mitigation strategies, so what about hurricane pollution prevention strategies? Like hurricane mitigation, there is a hurricane pollution prevention strategy which industry should use it. So facility should use it to prevent not only the pollution, but also to prevent a risk and damage from hurricane. So the first strategy related to materials and chemical storage protection. So key strategy is to elevate chemical and fuel storage above base flood elevation. This is also a strategy from FEMA. This is a recommendation. This is what FEMA recommend. Install a secondary containment system, anchor tanks to prevent flotation, secure the hazard materials in a containers, and conduct a facility vulnerability assessment. This is important, and I will be talking about this in details in the next slide. The water system, the wastewater and stormwater protection. Some of the key strategy is to elevate or flood-proof the wastewater treatment plants, install backup power, expand stormwater retention basins, install backflow prevention valves. For debris and solid waste management, key strategy is to develop FEMA complement debris management plans, uh, and to separate hazard waste from construction debris. This is very important because this will get the construction debris contaminated. Um, to monitor groundwater near debris sites. And for both the mitigation strategy, hurricane mitigation strategy, and pollution mitigation strategy, FEMA is recommended the use of natural based pollution mitigation using a natural based material. So these are for both, and I think it's very important and should be an area of research for future studies. So why engineering wants this to happen? So why they are giving us this recommendation? Because elevate the tanks will prevent release any chemical from this tank and will prevent the floating of this tank. uh, Anchor storage system will prevent floating. Backup power for waste water treatment management will prevent sewage overflow. Secondary containment will limit spread, and flood barriers will block transport pathways. So this is the reason we are giving these strategies. So now, how manufacturing facilities can prevent pollution? So this is something, as I said, it's work on progress. And first is by developing a hurricane pollution prevention assessment form. So this is what we are working right now on, developing an assessment form where facility can use this form to record some information related to their facility, related to their uh, emergency contact, and to their general site condition. Okay, so they can click, the assessor or who is ever doing this assessment, they can click here. So you can click on the form to identify each item. So this is a recommended to do before the event, so you know what you need to do to protect your facility. So when the hurricane hit, you will protect the building and you will minimize the pollution resulting from the facility. So this is something we are working on to develop, uh, and any facility can use this form to um, to assess their building and their The second is to develop a training. So this is something also we are working on, is to develop a training for manufacturing facilities on how they should train their employee to do the assessment. This is first, and to make them notice anything during the year. So even if it's not a, like, if it's, even if not the hurricane will hit, but during the year maybe facilities may need to assess their facility to keep it up to date in terms of structure, in terms of materials they are using. So the bottom line is connection between hurricane resilience and pollution prevention is tighter than it might seem to be first. Okay, so there is a connection between those. So hurricane resilience and pollution prevention are not two separate things, they are connected to each other. And hurricane resilience is a form of pollution prevention, so we cannot do one without the other. um, Lastly, pollution prevention assessment and training are very critical to minimize uh, contamination and to help identify potential pollution sources in the facility. So we need to do this assessment, we need to do this training, so everyone in the facility will be aware about any hazard or any risk the facility may have before the hurricane happened. This is all for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carol. All right, so now we have a space for question. Does anyone in the audience have a question? You can use the chat or raise your hand and I will unmute your microphone. Let me check here just in case there might be a question in the chat. There's a question. So, are there specific regulations or guidelines that industrial facilities must follow to ensure pollution prevention during hurricanes?
Yes,
Thank you,
so
Pablo.
FEMA has some specific regulation, and I think EPA also has, but since FEMA is specifically for hurricane events, so yes, so FEMA has some regulation and guideline. So the idea from the assessment form is also to include FEMA regulation in that assessment form. So people whoever doing the assessment in the facility, they can check that are these regulation and guidelines, or do they have this regulation and guidelines. Yeah, I can provide those if anyone wants it.
Thank you, Dr. Carol. Mirna has her hand raised. I unmute your microphone. Let me know if you have any issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for this conversation and information. Very, very interesting. Interesting. I have my question is, in your experience, which is the response time from the emergency responders to the industry during this type of events?
Okay, so this is a good question. I do not have it like a specific answer for that, but based on the three case studies uh, I presented, it was not like that fast. So this is one issue also, that the emergency responses is not fast, because it's not because they don't want to respond. But it's sometimes with these events you will have a road, so the road will be damaged. So it's hard to respond very fast. uh, but there should be like responses to people, to save people, and to maybe to facilities, but it's not that fast. So maybe a research or a work should be done more on this.
So basically, industry will need to make sure that they can provide their own first response.
Yes, I would, yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
yes.
Thank you, Mirna, for your question. Does anyone else have a question for Dr. Carol? I don't see any hands raised, but I appreciate the presentation, Dr. Carol. This was very, very insightful. And we certainly will share this presentation and recording to the participants later. Um, if you can share again your slides so I can provide some additional information for the participants today. We are going to have another webinar next month, and you will receive a link to register for that event. That I don't have the date just yet here on the let me see. Okay, that's gonna be April 9th. So very soon we will send you invitations if you are interested in hearing from our next speaker, Dr. Christian Cardenas. He's coming from the University of Florida, and he's gonna be talking about industrial energy management and how much can you save. So if this is something you are interested, keep this event in your radar. You can also check our recordings on YouTube if you are not able to attend. But thank you everyone for joining today to this session. You know you can find us always on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, our website, so you can have an idea what events are happening soon. And with that, everyone else can have 15 minutes back from your uh, regular plan to attend this event as we're finishing a bit earlier. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Carol.
Thank
I will
you.
be in touch with you soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right.